All right, then. So maybe you've been dreaming of trading in those gray skies for UK gray skies. I guess some things are universal, post speaker. But really, working in the UK's healthcare system sounds kind of, well, intimidating, right? All those forms and regulations.
Yeah, the UK visa process has a bit of a reputation.
It does, but that's why we're tackling this health and care worker visa today. We've got a stack of official documents right here, all ready to decode. So no worries, you don't need to be Sherlock to figure this one out.
What I find really interesting is how the UK government is using this visa to directly address their healthcare worker shortage. It's like they're sending out a big welcome message to qualified professionals from around the world.
Yeah, like a flashing neon sign, healthcare heroes wanted. And it's not just for doctors and nurses either, right? It
Yeah.
seems like they're casting a pretty wide net here.
You're absolutely right. The range of professions they've included is pretty impressive. We're talking podiatrists, speech therapists, even biomedical scientists. They're really opening the doors to a whole variety of healthcare specialties.
That's good news for anyone who might not fit into that, traditional medical mold. But
Code list. This list is basically the deciding factor, the VIP list for this visa. If your profession isn't on there, you're not going to get very far.
so, first things first. Grab your magnifying glass and your best deerstalker hat because it's time to play Find My Profession. And a word to the wise, don't get too hung up on finding your exact job title word for word. Think big picture, think categories. Like if you're let's say a specialized nurse, you might find your match under a more general nurse setting.
Exactly. Don't give up if you don't see your exact job title on the list. Try searching for related roles or broader categories. The key here is to find the closest possible match within their system.
Think of it like online shopping. Sometimes you have to play around with the search terms a little to find exactly what you're looking for.
It's all about being a little bit flexible and thinking outside the box. So you found your profession on that all-important list. That's a great start, but let's talk strategy for a second, yeah. Getting your foot in the door in the UK, it takes more than just ticking boxes.
Right. Got to make sure you can actually, afford to live there, right? I bet that's where the fine print comes in handy.
Well, let's just say the UK government, they want to be sure you're all set when you arrive, yeah.
Okay, so besides that occupation list, what are we talking about, essentials-wise? What do we absolutely have to have for this visa?
The big one, the non-negotiable, is a job offer from a UK employer. But, and this is important, not just any employer will do. They need to be officially approved to sponsor this visa.
So it's like a two-parter, find a job, but it has to be the right kind of employer.
Got it. Now, what about money? I'm guessing they want to see you're not coming in empty-handed.
You're spot on. There's a minimum salary requirement. Right now, that's set at £23,200 per year. But, and there's often that's just the base. What you actually need to earn, it can be higher.
Wait, so where you live in the UK, that affects how much you need to make?
Exactly. It all comes down to something called the going rate. Basically, it's the average salary for your job in that specific part of the UK. Like, think about it. London's pricey, right? So a nurse there, their going rate's going to reflect that.
So it's not just about a national minimum, it's about being able to actually afford to live wherever you end up. Makes sense. But what if you find this dream job, but they're offering a bit less than the going rate? Is that an automatic no? Not always. The UK knows that some folks are just starting out, right? So there are exceptions. Recent grads, for example, they might be okay with a slightly lower salary to start with.
So a little wiggle room, that's good. But just to be super clear, it doesn't matter what the visa allows. An employer can't pay less than the UK minimum wage, right? That's got to be the floor.
Absolutely. Can't go below that. That's there to protect every worker in the UK, no matter what.
Good to know. So we've tackled the job offer, the salary maze. What's next? Okay, so we've covered the job offer and the salary maze. What's next?
Well, we can't forget about the English language requirement. You'll need to be able to understand those British accents. Typically, you'll need to prove you've got a good grasp of the English language.
Makes sense. How do you prove your English is good enough? Is it back to school for more language exams?
Sometimes, yeah. But there are some exceptions. For instance, if you're a citizen of a country like the USA, Canada, Australia, or New Zealand, you're usually exempt. They figure you've got a pretty good handle on English already.
Right, so they're already a step ahead. But what about those who might not need a full English lesson, but maybe struggle with some of those, quirkier British slang terms?
Well, if you're a doctor or a dentist or a nurse or a midwife, and you've already passed a UK-recognized English language assessment specifically for your profession, you're usually in the clear.
Oh, that makes sense. Okay, so let's move on to a more personal aspect of this whole moving to the UK thing. It's one thing to pack your own bags, but what about partners, spouses, kids? Can they join the UK fun?
Definitely. The UK gets it, these big life decisions. You don't make them alone. Generally, spouses and partners can apply for what's called a dependent visa, right alongside the main applicant.
Okay, so romantic partners, check. What about kids?
Yep, children under 18 are usually welcome to join their parents too, but,
Hmm.
and this is important to keep in mind, even if a child is born in the UK while the visa holder's there, it doesn't mean they automatically become a citizen.
Oh, that's interesting. So being born on British soil doesn't guarantee UK citizenship. Okay, so let's say you've got your partner, you've got your kids, everyone's on board for this UK adventure. Are there any financial requirements for the dependents as well?
You're ahead of me. You guessed it. Just like with the main applicant, you have to show you can financially support your dependents while they're in the UK.
Gotcha. So it's all about proving you can handle the cost of living for yourself and your loved ones. It's starting to sound pretty thorough, which honestly is kind of reassuring. But I feel like there might be some special rules for certain professions, right?
Picking up on all the details. And yeah, unfortunately, there are some stricter rules for dependents of care workers and senior care workers.
Hmm.
Basically, it's tougher for their families to join them in the UK or to stay there long term.
That's a pretty big detail, and I don't know, it seems a bit unfair, especially given how important care work is.
Yeah, it's definitely caused some debate, that's for sure. Okay, so let's switch gears a little bit here. Let's say you've landed your dream job, you've got that visa in hand. This visa isn't a one-way ticket to permanent residency, is it?
Right. It's not like you're suddenly a British citizen.
Exactly. The health and care worker visa, it usually lasts for up to 5 years max. So it's kind of like a trial period.
A 5-year trial run in the UK? Not bad. But after those 5 years are up, then what? Back to square one.
Not at all. If you're loving life in the UK, you can apply for an extension to your visa. But of course, you still have to meet those original requirements.
Hmm.
You need to still have that sponsored job, still meet the salary requirements, all of that.
So it's like hitting the renew button on your UK adventure. I like it. But let's say someone really wants to, make the UK their permanent home. Is that even possible with this visa?
Absolutely. It's possible. After those first 5 years, you might be able to apply for something called indefinite leave to remain, which is basically the UK's version of permanent residency.
Indefinite leave to remain sounds very official. What does that actually mean for someone's, day-to-day life?
Simply put, it gives you the right to live, work, and study in the UK without any time restrictions. You can even come and go as you please, just like a UK citizen.
Wow, okay, so that's a pretty big deal. All right, last question before we let you go. Are there any restrictions on what you can and can't do while you're on this visa? Like, say you want to pick up some extra shifts at a private clinic, or you're feeling really motivated and want to volunteer at a local charity on the weekends. Are you allowed to do that?
Good news is the UK is all for you getting involved. Volunteering. Go for it. No special permission needed there. As for paid work on the side, as long as it doesn't mess with your main sponsored job, you're usually good to go.
That's great. So it's really a chance to fully experience life in the UK.
Exactly. It's about more than just working.
We've covered a lot of ground today, from occupation code lists to dependence and even permanent residency. It's been quite the deep dive.
It's true, the UK visa process, it can feel like a lot, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But like any good adventure, preparation is key.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Before we sign off, any final words of wisdom for our listeners who are ready to embark on their own UK healthcare journey?
My advice is simple. Do your research, read those official documents carefully, and don't be afraid to ask for help from a qualified immigration advisor if you're unsure about anything.
Solid advice. Well, on that note, we'll say goodbye for now. We hope you found this deep dive useful, maybe even, dare I say, a little bit fun. And remember, knowledge is power, especially when it comes to things like visas. Until next time.